communication where you have commands that directly lead to chain calls. And it's just going to be a lot easier for people to write open source contributions. It's going to be a lot simpler to use. It's way faster. It's more intuitive for new people who are maybe not quite as familiar with bittensor as we all are. So it's really just a huge improvement across the board. And it's really kind of marks this new chapter of bittensor that we're diving into. And so I'd love to share my screen here and just kind of walk you guys through some of the new features with the BT CLI. And we can just kind of see for ourselves what it looks like. So let me go ahead and share my screen. All right. Can you guys see that okay?
Yes, we can.
Cool. Awesome. So we have the new BT CLI, and if I do -- help, we'll see that even just looking at the help screen is a little bit cleaner. We have categorization of different options that are available to us, all made with love by the Open Tensor Foundation. And we'll see this throughout, is if you type -- help for anything, you'll get a breakdown like this. It's going to be just a little bit cleaner, a little bit more intuitive. But let's look at some things that make this CLI powerful, specifically with config. So we have this new config command. So I can do BT CLI config get, and we can see here that I have a whole bunch of different options. And I can go ahead and change these. So, BT CLI config set, and I can pass parameters to this, but if I don't pass parameters, it'll say, which config would you like to update? And let's say wallet name. I want to update my wallet name. What value would you like to assign? I will assign primary. That's the name of the wallet that I'll be using. I zoom my screen.
It's pretty good, but yeah, maybe just plus.
Yeah, PyCharm is kind of strange with font sizes.
I at least see it. I think Yikes is just blind.
Okay.
Sorry.
Cool. Okay, so now I can do BT CLI config get, and we can see that my wallet name is now primary. So now when I use the CLI, instead of asking me for my wallet name and whatnot, it'll see that I've set this value in the configuration, and I can just take advantage of that and never have to reset it again. We'll also see that I set the network to be test, so I can use testnet and not have to manually set the network to be testnet ever again. I can always just live in testnet or roundnet or whatever net I want to, and not have to add in all these options with every command. So if I can do wallet balance, for example, you see here, it looks at my balance and it doesn't ask me what wallet or what network I want to use. It just knows. And so we can see here what my balance is like. We've got this new layout for tables. This is across the board. Every table looks like this. Everything is color-coded so that when you see keys, they'll be consistent. And this is what everything will look like. And maybe we want to look at something a little bit more with a little bit more color. So let's look at a metagraph. So BT CLI submits metagraph, something that we all know and love. Let's just grab something just arbitrarily, netuid 2. This is again testnet. And here's what we see for the metagraph. And now, one thing you'll see up here is that I'm hiding columns. And you might have noticed up here that there's these metagraph calls. So we can look at some of them are true, some of them are false. So now, what we can do actually is BT CLI config metagraph. And it'll take us to this menu. And now I can add and subtract things. Let's say I don't care about rank. Let's say I do care about updated. I'll click enter. And now I will do the same thing. And we'll go ahead and show these new columns. The other thing I can do is I can do -- reuse last. And instead of actually pinging the chain, it actually caches metagraphs when I grab them. And it'll just grab the most recently used metagraph. So if there's some information that maybe I want to play with, over and over again, and I don't want to have to like recall the chain every time I want to use this, then I can go ahead and just use reuse last, and I'm good to go. And another thing that we can do is we have this new HTML output. So I could do dash dash HTML. This works for most tables actually. Um, and now I have this. And I have this new interface, and I can actually filter. So I can say, okay, I'm on NetUID2. I want to grab all UIDs with stake that is greater than like 10 or something. Greater than equal to 10. We don't have a lot. Okay, so now I have this filtering, and I can go ahead and download this as a JSON. And I can take a look here, and it gives me a JSON object with the information for just the fields that I have filtered. So if you want to manipulate data on the metagraph, this is the way to do it. And this is going to be just a lot more easy for people to just interact with the chain and use things. So this is across the board. All tables look like this. And this is really just an example of kind of what the new UI looks like in the BT CLI. And you also notice that the commands, when they execute, they don't take a minute and a half to run. They're actually pretty quick. So,
And they're quick using the new Rust decoder, right?
Yeah, we're using the new Rust BT decode. We're also using the new asynchronous PyScepter interface that we've re-implemented from scratch.
So this whole push, in many ways, was stimulated by the hack. Bad things become good things. The decision to split all of the repositories into different sections, to focus the SDK on allowing people to build subnets, to focus the CLI on allowing people to interact with the chain, but also pulling out the wallet, right? And so we've rewritten the wallet, or we're in the process of writing the wallet in Rust, correct, Garrett? Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So this new CLI, along with the SDK, uses a new pip package called BT Wallet. And right now it's written in Python. And it has an advantage as it currently stands in the sense that it just doesn't get updated as frequently as the CLI and the SDK. So that this gives you peace of mind so that when you do actually get new CLI updates, let's say we updated once a week, well, the wallet's not going to be updated once a week, so the surface area of attack is reduced. But we're taking that a step further, and we're rewriting the whole thing in Rust and exposing that in our pip package. And what this will do, I mean, yes, it'll give us some performance improvements out of the box because it's Rust, but also it'll give us some more security because it'll allow us to have more ready support for Ledger, for hardware wallets. It'll allow us to better protect private keys and memory, and it'll give us this new interface where instead of being able to access private keys within a class object, within a class object or a member, we will have those private keys protected using what is called a secret in Rust, and that memory will be protected. And then what we'll do is we'll pass messages to the wallet. The wallet will sign them on our behalf and return the signed version. So this will all be done under the hood. So this is not going to impact the user experience, but it will make things a lot more secure. Hardware wallets are really the name of the game with security, and we want to make sure that we are bring that front and center with the wallet. But in the event that you don't have a hardware wallet, we want to make sure that that can be as secure as possible by limiting the amount of exposure that your private keys have, and really just handling those variables so that they're just not low-hanging fruit for a hacker.
Amazing. Yeah, this is huge. It's been a long time coming, and I think that the organization at the code level is importantly, it's great for us being able to accept outside contribution, because right now it's mostly, well, almost entirely OpenTensor who is responsible for the SDK and the CLI and the wallet. But long term, we really need this to come from outside contribution. Like the people that use this are developers, subnet owners, subnet creators, miners.
Solid point.
And we would love to have contribution from people in this community who can make this much more of an open source aspect of OpenTensor and not just something, an asset that we hold and maintain. Of course, we will be there maintaining the CLI and the SDK for a long time to come, but we do want this to exist outside of the OpenTensor organization and truly run itself like Bitcoin does, right? As a GitHub run by a number of individuals, not all directly controlled by the same organization. So Garrett, this is awesome. Anything else we want to touch on here? Like, there's the speed improvements are just amazing, right? Like the fact that we're using Rust to decode things instead of having scale codec done in Python. You know, in the back end, we built the connection with the chain to be asynchronous, so we can do a lot of really fast operations. What's an example here that we've sped up, like something that we've really sped up, Garrett, that we want to show?
Uh, well, yeah, so we just saw the metagraph. That's already a lot faster. Another thing we can do is basically, well, overview, um, dash dash all. This is something that would normally take a year and a half to do, but here we are. No hotkeys found for these wallets. That's fine. Synchronizing with the chain. And I've got a lot of wallets, so bear with me here. But there we go. Um, so huge speed improvements on just something like wallet overview and um, really anything that you guys will are used to using will have some level of speed improvement. The average speed improvement across the board is 200%. Everything is faster. So the things you'll most care about are these kind of larger calls to the chain that might be doing more things, multiple things at once. Metagraph is probably the thing that most notably comes to mind, but everything across the board is faster, as fast as can be. And actually, I think what you guys will find is that if you build your own scripts with PySubstrate interface, you might find that the CLI actually interacts with the chain faster than that does. Matter of fact, I'm very confident you will.
Huh. Mm-mm-mm. Amazing. What is that quote from Steve Jobs, right? If we shave a second off the load time, hundreds of thousands of people's lives, um, measured in years, saved.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
And from that perspective, we certainly wasted a lot of people's time in the past with this. It was effectively prototyped when we first built it, and now it's much more secure, much more advanced enterprise application for people to use. And we saw a little of a sneak peek here of how we want to integrate the CLI with the browser and allow people to do some of their operations in conjunction with even things like using the web wallet and the extension with the CLI and making a cohesive system of applications that are much more user friendly, so that, hey, my grandma can use the CLI, if people want me to say it that way. Great, Gary. Okay, here's a quote. Well, let's say you can shave 10 seconds off the boot time, multiply that by 5 million users, and that's 50 million seconds every single day. Over a year, that's probably dozens of lifetimes. So if you make it boot 10 seconds faster, you've saved a dozen lives. That's really worth it, don't you think? I love that. It's beautiful. Garrett, any more here to show? Or should we just tell people to go out and download it and get going? Anything we want to,
I think people
yeah.
yeah, I think people need to download this and try it. We can go through a bunch of different commands with registrations and things like that, but really, I'd encourage everyone to just try it. Everything will be faster. Everything will be a better UI. Everything will look like what we just demoed here today. This is a complete, ground up redesign of the BT CLI. It's a completely new repository, completely new code base. Go ahead and check out the main branch and look at the code and submit some PRs. This is open source. And we're really excited to have this out. So we launched it yesterday. You can update your bittensor now. You'll get the SDK, you can get the CLI, and both of those will include the wallet as well. So yeah, I would just encourage people to use this.
So next RAW games will be with this CLI, correct? Correct, Garrett?
Yep, that's correct.
That's gonna be fun. Okay, so switching gears a little bit, um, let's get Fish up on the stage, and we're gonna do a demo for your subnet, I believe. So, welcome,
Hey, can we also invite Warris up here too?
Walrus. Is his hand raised?
Just in case anything goes wrong. He's the developer.
Okay.
We've been working so hard on this the last couple weeks. Actually, no, this has been like almost 3 months in progress, this subnet that I'm gonna demo. And we weren't really prepared for a demo today, but you put us on the spot, so we worked basically all night and all day today to hopefully have something presentable. Here, I'll add him.
Walrus. Okay. Um,
Is he not in the call?
oh no, I see him. I see him. Inviting him to speak. So he should see that now and be able to come up. Well,
Cool.
hopefully you
Well
just
then,
a
while
couple go.
that's happening, I can share my screen and sort of show what we've been working on. We just made the repository public on the Deter organization, so I can share that here. And then we have a front end now. Basically, it's a new compute subnet where the goal is to be able to directly provide value to validators and users of bittensor through basically the whole goal is just it's a compute subnet, but all it does is it's a rental company where you can. So here's the login screen, cloud compute. We log in. Here's our homepage dashboard. We'll have usage metrics. Right now, pods. Um, so currently we're testing on renting these A100s and H100s. So it's super simple to run actually. We have everything is well documented in the miners and executors folder. Um, Basically, you just install the requirements and run pdm install. It will install everything for you, and you just install a simple .env, and it will add those machines to our dashboard, where you can now rent these GPUs from the miners on the subnet. So this is currently running on testnet, and the testnet
That's
miners
so
are
fucking
providing
cool.
these GPUs, and now we can rent them straight from the testnet, the testnet miners. So let me show a quick example of how to do this. Um, so here's H100, for example. If I want to rent that, we'll just do H100 test for the pod. Um, right now it's a default PyTorch template. SSH keys, you would just implement your SSH key inside um, right here. So that's my SSH key, and just deploy. Same thing as basically all of the other cloud compute providers. We just make it super simple, and it gives you the SSH connection command to run here, and we just run that.
Oh, that's
Say you want
awesome.
to connect, yes, and now we're in the H100. So we can see here when we run NVIDIA SMI, there's two H100s here that I have full access to now, straight from the miners on the subnet. So the way that we do scoring now, we just tried to make it as simple as possible instead of doing all this roundabout ways of trying to verify how much compute they have without actually knowing. The way we do it is we have a custom NVIDIA SMI package that we developed, where we just what the validators actually do is they SSH into the miner's machine before running all these tests. So we're not relying on what the miners tell us. What we do is the miners they open up the SSH port, and as you could see in this miner config, I just have to allow access to this IPM port to the validators. The validators will SSH in. It'll run a few tests to get your bandwidth, your latency, your location, what GPUs you have, and then it will run a quick training script to see the quality of your GPUs. So, I mean, you guys probably know that within the same type of GPU, sometimes there's differing qualities. So what we do after that is we run like a simple GPT-2 training run to see how fast it runs. And then within like depending on how well you do in that range, we time it, and we have a max score per GPU type, which is just based on the run pod prices. And you can right now provide any GPU that run pod offers. We just have the same pricing. Oh, by the way, pricing is set up too. So we have a billing page. Stripe is fully integrated. You can pay with card. Right now, we're using the Stripe test network, but Stripe and Link is integrated. And we have sign in with Google and GitHub. So you have to buy the balance, and then we're ideally going to our next on the to-do, we were talking with Manifold about this, is integrate Tau payments and other crypto payments. And this would actually go straight to the validators that connect. So the way that it works on the miner side is they actually have to choose a validator to give access to, because it doesn't really make sense if the miner wants to register on the subnet and give basically they have one miner but all validators can access it. There's just going to be a bunch of conflicting issues if all these validators are trying to rent it at the same time and SSH into it. So the miner has to pick in the config. You can see this in the README. When you start the executor, you have to pick which validator you want to have access to it. Or in the miner, actually. So this is all you have to do. This command right here is all you have to do to add an executor. You pick which validator should have access. And then this is just the SSH IP import. I think I've gone over most of the functionality.
Can this happen automatically? Like, so instead of having to go validator to validator and doing that analysis based on their stake, are there tools in this repository just to like distribute your GPUs that you have available directly to validators?
Currently, no. You just have to specify the validator hotkey. But I mean, that could be done really easily. We would just do a stake weighted. We would normalize by stake, and let's say OpenTensor has 20% of stake, and TauStats has 10% of stake. For every 2 GPUs that you allocate to TauStats, to OpenTensor, you'd want to allocate 1 to TauStats. So it should just be stake proportional GPU access. And all of these validators can connect straight to our front end. So then all of these GPUs that are running on the miners will show up on the front end available to rent. And then yeah, I lost my train of thought.
Wild. And what happens if you wait copy on it?
Now, by the way. If you wait copy?
Yeah.
We don't care. You won't get access to any of these H100s. Because miners have no reason to provide you any GPUs if you're wait copying. So I've been saying this for a long time. This is the solution to wait copying, is provide value to subnets. And this is it. It's so obvious here. Like I've been using these GPUs that are running on testnet to run jobs over the last couple of days for testing. And now I don't need to use RunPod or any other cloud compute company because it just comes from the miners. And that enough is so much incentive not to wait copy. Because not only do you get access to them, but you also get the revenue from renting these out to people.
And so you could run validators on every subnet on this subnet easily.
Oh, yeah, easily. Extremely easily.
It doesn't kick you out. It doesn't kick you out of these machines. So, like, what miners get deregistered, and how does that?
Let's go back to one of these pods I'm renting. So here's the H100. I don't remember if this was the one I was in or not. Oh no, I hadn't entered this one yet. So yeah, you can. Let's just start from scratch. So that one was created with Loris's SSHP. So when you delete it, it just goes back to being available for anybody. And now what I can do is rent this again with my SSHP. You can make customizable templates, by the way, with custom startup scripts, which is pretty awesome.
So one question about the validation: what happens if a miner figures out that the machine is being rented, and decides to boot that user off of the machine and then try to sell that same machine to another validator?
Yeah, it's a good question, and there's a lot of sort of nuances like that that we've been thinking about. The one that I'm leaning towards now is something like how Arasha solved Subnet 8. What they do is they have a high registration cost, and then it's a combination of what Arasha is doing on Subnet 8 and what Vast does. So Vast also has a sort of a peer-to-peer rental system, and you can give feedback like if the pod actually doesn't work. What the user can do is say, okay, this pod doesn't working. The validator will take that into account,
What do you mean?
and the validator can basically make a note of the
I don't
miner
buy
that
it.
the miner isn't working. Also, it can verify that because the validator has SSH access itself. So if it's not working, basically it can slash it and not give it any incentive and make the registration cost be wasted, which we can make pretty high because there's no UID competition here, because you can add all of these GPUs onto a single UID and just the score is proportional to how many GPUs you have.
So basically, the validator can do spot checks.
Exactly.
Um,
And the penalty would just be you lose your registration fee if that happens. But on top of that, we have another incentive of the GPU being rented from the miner's perspective, which is that while they're being rented, we allocate them max score for that GPU type. And while they're being synthetically queried, tested, we allocate like slightly different scores based on their speed. But basically, we want the miners to want to be rented and used. So while they're being rented, they get max score for their GPU type.
And the scoring, you say it comes from a combination of things, right? So on one side, it's the costs for the equivalent GPU on RunPod, and then also
So here,
you're also looking at the speed.
it's basically just the cost is the max score. And then from the synthetic test that we run on the validator of everyone of that same type, if there's more than one of the same type, we normalize over that. And if you have a worse score than the other person, you'll get the max score here times a penalty for you getting a worse score of that same GPU type.
So things like, what is it, SMX, machines with SMX, like H100s with SMX are somewhat faster than the equivalent machine, or like a machine like an H100 that's in a pod is maybe more valuable than the equivalent. Are these, would adding extending the incentive mechanism to include that type of thing just be as simple as updating this JSON file?
Yeah, well, this is just the max score for the GPU type. On top of that, we're adding different factors, which is such as bandwidth. The most recent thing we added was bandwidth, so we check the upload and download speed. First of all, so we can have it on the metrics to put the upload and download speed while people are choosing which GPU to rent. But then, yeah, there'll just be penalties based on how slow your bandwidth is. And this is just averaged across SXM, NVL, and PCIe right now. But we actually found out how to figure out which type the pod is, and so we can make this 3 separate categories now.
Okay, so a bit of a philosophical question. Some people were noticing in the chat or mentioning in the chat, like, well, isn't this just like a thoroughfare between bittensor and other cloud providers? I mean, it's similar question could be asked about something like a cache or IONet, right, where it's crypto incentives that aggregate compute.
Shadeform.
Is there or shadeform in some sense? Where do the efficiencies come from here, right? Like,
the important thing here is that most of these cloud providers, if we look at Shadeform, which is also just aggregated compute, first of all, I see huge benefits in having one platform, which is aggregated compute across a bunch of different platforms. Now Shadeform is the only GPU provider that I use. Shout out Miners Union for showing me this. But on top of this, let's say, for example, for a specific one, like, I'm blanking, but like RunPod, if you want to host your GPU on RunPod, you have to go through so many verifications. It's all these manual forms that you fill out. And what we do here is you don't have to do anything. It's just proof of GPU. So our subnet is proof of GPU, and you don't need to do anything else except have a GPU. Anyone can do this, anyone with a GPU. we make the barrier to entry like literally just 3 commands in the startup, and then you just automatically get rewarded.
So barriers to entry and the ability for like liquid compute clusters to move in and out of this swarm without going through forms. You can just, you know, download a script and run it, you know, maybe one script off a website, and boom, their H100 is being monetized in Tau. And, you know, I think that there's probably an incredible amount of inefficiency in those marketplaces, even when these are markets which are highly efficient, given the demand for these H100s and other NVIDIA chips. So what do you think that efficiency margin is? Like, what, you know, do you think that we'll be able to get cheaper machines measured in Tau than these competitors?
So the number one thing is that the compute is automatically subsidized by Tau inflation to an extent. But to answer the other part of your question, I think there's no question about it. We can become the biggest cloud compute GPU provider in the world through bittensor. And all of that is cyclical around Tau. It's gated by access to Tau. But, well, I mean, there's a lot of different strategies we can take here. We could make the purchases have to be in Tau, but all of this is gated by access to a validator, and then it drives more demand for access to a validator, to have a validator, which also drives more demand for Tau. And all of these things are just, I think, one of the perfect subnets for the bittensor ecosystem.
I mean, to a comment in the chat, Parmesan says the only reason it would be cheaper is that it's subsidized in Tau. I mean, that's incorrect. Because if you look at the way that these markets work, miners are always expanding into excess reward. So the number of GPUs on the network will expand into and match the inflation of the price in Tau for that subnet, and then exceed. Because if there are positions or places where efficiencies can be added, then we actually get more compute than we would be paying otherwise. Like, that's the whole premise. I think this is one of the first subnets that makes direct sense. You know, there's a lot of moving parts here, but I would say that in one fell swoop, you've just cut out a large number of other GPU providing crypto projects in the space with something that's much more fluid, direct, decentralized, and working on bittensor, which is really cool. I mean, like, so Open Tensor Foundation, for instance, with our 1.2 or so million Tau, we could get access to thousands of GPUs, a massive cluster of GPUs to run and train a pretty large machine learning model. It's funny, this morning I was in a chat with Imad Mosk, the guy from Stability AI, and he was telling me that bittensor should just be driving all of its inflation into building and buying B100s or B200s, I believe they're called, massive H100s, so that we can put together a supercomputer. And I thought it was quite funny that he would be claiming that we don't do that on a Telegram group this morning, when about 10 hours later, we already have a decentralized NVIDIA cloud provider coming to bittensor. So, I mean, this is really exciting. I think there's a lot of moving pieces, a lot of potential security issues, a lot of potential, you know, just adversarial attacks and vulnerabilities. Like, you'll have to smooth all of this out. But this is probably one of the first subnets on bittensor where there is just direct and obvious monetizational value. And you know, I think, like, as to your point, it really is an immediate solution to something like weight copying, where if you weight copy on the subnet, which we've been saying for a while, you just don't get access to the digital commodity that's being provided, in this case, you know, easily monetizable machines. So what are some other, like, you know, edge cases here, things that you've thought about to make sure that it's impossible to cheat, and we do know how many GPUs that we have on the subnet? Like, what you know, thinking like a miner, how have you imagined that you would break this, and how have you fixed that?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different concerns that we've had to take into account over the last 3 months while we're building this, specifically with the security part that some people are mentioning about, like SSH keys, for example. We have a really cool solution how validators manage a database based on their clients, with clients being basically users of the front end. So each one has their own SSH key, and it's like an SSH into an SSH, and all of it is in encrypted databases. And then going back to your other question, which was how can miners cheat? So the most obvious way to get their GPU information to see how much incentive they should get would be just NVIDIA SMI, just running that command. And right away we realized, okay, well, miners can just make an alias for this command. And then we're like, okay, but what if we Docker in and run in an isolated environment? And like, well, then what if they can still potentially hack that? And then we're like, okay, what if we build NVIDIA SMI from scratch and then run the package that we built from scratch after SSHing into the miner, installing an isolated environment, and then building from scratch. And then, I mean, it just gets harder and harder until eventually, I think. I mean, right now, I don't see of a potential way that it can be hacked. The way that we are so robustly getting the GPU information, but I'm sure somebody will figure it out, and we'll have to fix it, as is always the case with bittensor subnets.
So let's talk security. Like a lot of people in the chat mentioning, oh, like, well, where's my hotkey gonna go? Like, can the person who runs the machine access my running script? Like, is it in a Docker container? Is it sandbox with a VM? It sounds like
Yeah.
all of those problems can be solved by the miners themselves, right? So when it comes to running in Docker or VM, for security of the actual machine and making sure that people can't actually mess with the machine. But are there ways that you see that people can protect their keys? Let's say we were trying to run a validator on one of these machines. Like, how would we do it in a way that would protect us from a malicious person who's actually running the machine? Does that make sense?
Well, I think security goes both ways. There's also security in terms of the validator and client side. I think that's what Ref was mentioning, is that if you want to run the GPU from the miner, you have to put your hotkey on the miner, which I think that's true. You do have to be careful there because the miner can just copy the drive. But this is the same case with things like Fast, where they don't have dedicated data centers based on trust. When you have trustless environments like this, you do have to make some precautions, and there is some sort of trade-off there. It's completely trustless, but you have to know that, just like with Vast, that yeah, the miners can probably take your data, even though everything is Dockerized. What was your other question?
No, I mean, I think that is the answer. I mean, you can imagine ways of rotating keys and also not even holding the keys on the validator and doing making requests to another server which signs the request and things like this. Like that's how I would build it if I was really being careful. And honestly, that's the way that people should be building validators even to this day. Not even holding their machines on in the same code base that is run by the subnets. Things like child keys, etc. So what's the difference between this and SN27?
As far as I know, SN27 is still running Hashcat, but I mean, I haven't checked in on them recently. I haven't been able to rent a machine from them, as far as I know. If y'all from SN27 in the chat can correct me if I'm able to rent a machine or what the major problems y'all ran into were.
Perhaps we'll get there soon. So, I mean, the ability to rent a machine is fantastic, and the fact that you could demo that here with a front end and that you can run scripts. There'll be a lot of questions to answer here about the efficiency of this system and also the security. Yeah, so wicked. So I just saw a comment in the chat from Smoke Baby about that, but the hack. We'll answer those questions later. Are there other people who want to get up on stage and ask Fish questions? Nam, you want to get up on stage if you're welcome. Ref is here. This will be a battle.
We have some compute subnet competitors, which is not a bad thing. So yeah, we can have them up. I'm sure Ref will find a bunch of issues with our design.
Yeah, so like a similar release was done by Neural Internet a few months ago. They showed the front end like that. And I'm just wondering, like, okay, everything that you're saying is true. So you know, we can be a Rampot competitor or Fast AI. Um, but like we kinda already did that, and you're saying okay, but they're using Hashcat. So you're using neural network training instead of Hashcat to benchmark the machines. Is that like the major difference?
I mean, the difference is that you can rent the machine. I don't know how to do that from any of the other subnets.
They Okay, I'm pretty sure like they published a video which looked kind of like yours, but you were just picking a
But
specific machine, right?
oh, they're saying that you can do that in subnet 27. Why why
Yeah,
do I not know about
like
that?
for many months. Like this is not a new thing. I think they released it in March or something.
Why do I not know about this?
I mean, so is there so just to be clear,
What,
so
how do I
you
do
can
it?
access a miner's machine on 27, SSH into it, and run a arbitrary script?
Well, yes. The balancing is there a little bit messed up because they change the scoring when you use the machine. Then um, oh, okay. Someone posted a link to their site. So they give you like an arbitrary score when you're using the machine, and you have to be a validator in order to be able to use it.
But I have a validator. I have a validator key. If someone from subnet 27 wants to come up, we can try to rent the machine right now from a subnet 27 miner. Or show me how to do this.
Either
'Cause that
way,
would be really cool.
um, so either way, um, we can battle the Butte subnets, and it's
Yeah,
at
it's
the end
not
of the
really
day.
about that. I think that would be really amazing if they can do that. I mean, even if two subnets can do this, the better. Um,
Okay,
a
so what
competition
people are
says
writing on
that.
chat is they released a video that shows how it's going to work, but they didn't actually release the thing. And I know they changed the head developer a few times, so maybe they're just unable to execute. Maybe that's it. Okay, so how are you going to make it? Because Subnet 27 had people, you know, intercepting the commands that the validator was trying to run to figure out what it is, and just routing. So if they see that's a validator, they route it to a good machine, and if they see that it's a client, they run it
All the
on
clients
some
are
shroud.
routed through validator.
On
So
all the
Like I said,
commands
the
are run through
validator
validator.
manages. Right, the validator has the public key of all of the client's SSH keys, and that's why I said it's nested SSH basically. You have to go through the validator, and then the validator manages the database of the SSH keys for the clients.
Okay, that's a little bit harder to proxy, but like not really,
No,
right?
well, the validator basically tells a miner, it's like, okay, we are going to use any of these 20 SSH keys. If these are the SSH keys logged in our database, I don't know if you saw, but in the front end, there's an SSH keys section where you can just add a bunch of SSH keys, and that will just be in the database, and that's projected to the miner. It's like all of these public keys, and then the miner doesn't know. There's like, okay, the validator can use any one of these, and the validator can do testing on any one of these.
Okay, but the
So
tests
the
performed
client
by
just
the
have to
validator
change
will
it
be
easily.
the same, right? So
Sorry?
the validator will run the same commands to do the testing, right? So you can easily see
I mean,
that's
it's
the
just SSHing into the machine. There's not really any other commands except you just SSH in. We don't ever do any sort of communication through like the Axon or the Dendrite and bittensor. It's just SSH in and then run all the tests in there. Um, Same way the clients will use it.
We've got
okay.
Loris on the call, but he didn't come up. We'll invite him to speak again. And Loris, and I believe, is the main dev behind the scenes here, right, Fish? And really applause to him for amazing
Yeah,
work.
huge shout out to the Datura team. Warris and Zhang have been working on this really hard. Yeah, it's been months long that we've been. Oh, he requested to speak. Can you accept him, Cost?
Oh, sorry, Boris or someone else?
Yeah, he requested to speak. He has his hand up on the chat.
I've invited him to speak. I think I requested him, not the other way around.
Uh,
Unless I'm mistaken.
Yeah, anyways. Yeah, huge shout out to them. They've been working super hard on this. It's been a long journey. I think someone asked when mainnet. Before the end of next week is the plan.
Wow.
Maybe Thursday, Friday of next week. We'll just have a week to finish up solidifying some things, and then we'll launch, ready to get hacked by the miners.
Hey, while you guys are getting worse on here, Fish, you mentioned that you made this like super accessible and easy to run, and I want to know if you think this will extend to non-data center GPUs, so things like MacBooks and PlayStations and gaming computers.
Yeah, the great thing is that, I mean, you saw our config file when I was sharing my screen. We can just assign an amount of to literally anything. And then as long as you have that, and we can verify that once we SSH validator, we can give you some percentage of the incentive. We just would need to expand that config file.
Yeah, makes sense. I hope to bring you many consumer GPUs very soon.
Okay, so Fish, pretty impressive. I have a couple of questions. So, what does the incentive landscape look like, and how do you deal with like validators fucking around? So, like validators like finding top miner and like executing malicious packages on the instead of evaluator.
Yeah, so this will be the
And,
hard
and
part
also,
of the
and also, the question that wasn't answered, I was asked, is how do you ensure that miners provide high SLAs? What happens if the computer goes off? Because one problem with like providing services like this is like reliability of those services. Because when I go to run pod or no Shadeform, I expect my computer to be running like until I run out of money. So how do you handle that?
Right. Right. Yeah, and that's what I said earlier about basically we can try to gatekeep it by registration costs. And since validator, there's only one validator that have access to a miner's GPU, they have to allocate them across specific validators. So a validator can just choose to slash that miner and they'll lose their registration fee. I think Ref was also experimenting with this without having any UID pressure. And wait, what was your first question?
The incentive landscape, what does that look like?
Oh yeah, there's no UID pressure. You can just add as many GPUs to the same miner, and your score is just multiplied by however many GPUs times that GPU incentive score from the cost of the GPU. We'll times some other metrics like bandwidth, latency, and speed of the GPU. But so it should look exponential, as is the case with most subnets without UID pressure. But we'll have to see once we launch on mainnet. Namra, to answer your question, so actually in order to get any incentive on the subnet, you'll have to have a minimum of 4 GPUs, because you'll have to provide 1 GPU to OpenTensor, Taosets, Foundry, Polychain, to get at least half the stake voting for you. We suspect there will be probably some vTrust issues in the beginning, but we encourage people to copy weights or child key, so that in case they don't have any GPUs allocated to them, they won't really be able to score anyone if they're a really small miner. I mean, really small validator. So you can just copy weights of the top validators until, because if you're a really small validator, you might not have any stake anyway to be able to access the GPUs.
Wild. Well, I can't wait for this to work because I'm currently renting a lot of machines and I'd rather just be using my Tau. The front end will.
I'll delete my. Yeah, everything's live right now. I can delete my H100s if you want to use the H100s from the miners.
Well, why don't you join them into the the testnet
Or
bistro run.
training run. Yeah.
Maybe not today. We were still trying to squash a couple bugs that would probably screw things up if we went into an incredibly. Yeah. Well, no. Actually, maybe not. Let's do it. Let's do it. I'm down. I'm down. Give me tens of thousands of GPUs. Let's train 100 bees.
I don't have all those myself. We'll have to wait for mainnet next week.
Exciting. Great. Any more questions from the crowd here? This was a scintillating one today. Lots of hot takes, disagreements in the chat as well as on stage.
I have an important comment. So subnet 12 was the first one that successfully deployed commit reveal. So the wait copiers have used child hotkey to delegate their stake to honest validators, because it's like no longer possible to just wait copy, because miners change their performance frequently, and some of them more and more every day. They do it in an unpredictable manner. So you have to actually run the validation process to see how much compute power they have.
Ref, tell us a
Wouldn't
little
it be
bit.
better just to, first of all, that's great that you finally figured that out, Ref. It's been months in the making. But wouldn't it be better just to have validators want to validate rather than trying to force them to validate?
Yeah, I guess. I think they soon will, because they will be able to run validation of other subnets securely on subnet 12. So that there will be no risk that someone steals their hotkey or something like that.
Is that
Cool.
Can I ask about that, or is that secret sauce, Ref?
No. I've been talking about this publicly. So what do you want to know?
How do you do that?
The validation.
No, how do you protect the hotkeys on these machines?
Okay, so for example, let's say subnet 9, because many people know it. The task to perform the evaluation of the model will be run on an external GPU, but then the validator itself will run on a GPU-less compute instance, which has the actual hotkey. And you can actually use multiple GPU servers from subnet 12 to increase your efficiency of validation of the evaluation of the models, because a commitment can be done every 20 minutes on subnet 9, and there is like 200 miners, so it's potentially 600 models per hour to validate, and one GPU just cannot do all of it.
I love the competition. I think we want to see liquid markets on bittensor.
We're doing a slightly different thing, so
yeah, and that's okay. There's
it's
room
a
for
broader offer.
Yeah, and let's build a computational foundation layer to bittensor. You know, from Apex, where we're just measuring intelligence, all the way down to raw compute. Let's get full stack. Let's shove it to Imad and build a massive compute cluster and train models on 9 with data scraped from other subnets, and inference it on the multiple inference subnets that we have. Like, it's coming together. It's really exciting, guys, and it's been so much work from so many people to make this happen. You know, working in cooperation, not just competition across subnets, it's really exciting to see. Okay, well, let's end the call here, unless there's any questions or thoughts from people about other things. I did actually wanted to answer one question for what was it? From Smoky Baby. So that there is a law enforcement action taking place but OpenTensor is not involved. So I can't speak too much about that because it's difficult when there are legal things at play, but we're not directly involved in that. Speaking of the hack, we're in the process of finalizing some of the structure for the way in which we will be able to get people back that were affected by that hack. So bear with us. We have not forgot about that whatsoever. It just takes time to lay the groundwork and organize funds and do things legally and properly and safely and securely and all these things to protect bittensor. Hey, like maybe you would have sold your tokens if we'd give them back to you right away. And so the fact that we still have them has meant that there's been a bit of an increase in price, which is good for you guys, and perhaps we would have sold at the bottom there. So I won't say anything more on that. There'll be another call where we talk more on that topic. I won't necessarily be the one leading that. It'll be other people describing how we're going to get those affected by the hack back to their normal balances. So, yo guys, thank you so much. Fish, that was fantastic. Garrett, fantastic as well. Really exciting week for various reasons. 2 awesome launches. Ref, as always, having you on the stage is great. Throwing some critiques at the new subnet is fantastic. That's how we grow and make things that are better over time. So, ciao everyone.
One thing real quick.
Yeah.
For everyone playing the RAW games, the emissions have stopped. So in order to be counted for the final rewards, you have to unstake everything, and your free balance is what will be counted in the final rewards. So unstake everything, and feel free to chat in the RAW channel if you have questions. But the RAW games are over, and we'll let you know when the new one starts up.
Yeah,
Lovely.
I should have played that
Thanks,
more,
everyone.
honestly.
Thanks for having me, Const.
You're welcome. Bye.
Cool. See you guys.
Well, and with that, I suppose we will call it a wrap here, and then probably later on, do some more maybe front end stuff. My plan actually was to do Vim Racer, so I don't look like as much of an idiot while this went on, but there was too many interesting things, as there always is. So yes, I guess if it sounds amusing to you to watch either some robots build my software or me fumble through trying to build it with NeoVim, because I will never give up, then I don't know. You can probably